it out that the sun shines down its power to all the world and makes the wind blow strong as it will. I wonder how gentle rains can fall upon the land, so lovely earth can stay lovely still. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the 622nd edition of Energy Week with George Harvey, me, and the amazing Nancy Wolf.
Me? Thank you.
And this show, in case you don't know, is news aggregation for energy and climate change in a week, which starts on April 24th and ends on April 30th. Both being Thursday, from Thursday, April 24th to Wednesday, April 30th. Let's get this straight. And it's the items that we're talking about are news pieces that are taken from my blog, which is a news aggregation blog that's posted every day. Again, dealing with climate change and energy. And what else do I have to say? Oh, yes. If you want to read the articles that we're talking about, you can go to the blog, geoharvey.com, geoharvey.com, or you can scroll down on the screen. Not everybody will be able to do that, but if you can, you'll find lower on the screen in the description of the show, the last line usually is a link to a place where you get just the pieces on this show, which means you get the photograph, the title of the article, the synopsis, and then finally the link to the original article. So you can read these articles if you want to get them in more detail. Right?
Yes.
Okay. Should we just go to the first item?
Yeah.
Okay. There we go. And this is an item from Renew Economy. Renew Economy, by the way, is an Australian publication.
Well, so the headline here is, meanwhile, in China, 60 gigawatts of new solar capacity added in first quarter of 2025.
60 gigawatts. That's incredible.
Yeah.
I mean, that's an incredible amount of, and actually, China's National Energy Administration announced that operating solar capacity increased by 43.4% in the first quarter. They're really doing something in China. The first quarter of this year, with nearly 60 gigawatts of new capacity added, the total installed generating capacity in China has reached 3.43 terawatts. Now, this is not just renewable capacity, this is all capacity, so it includes coal and nuclear and so forth. China doesn't have very much natural gas, but they've got a lot of coal. And I think the coal capacity has started to decline. And if that's the case, then the Chinese are probably not going to be buying any from Russia.
Yeah, from what I've read today, that doesn't seem to be the case.
How do you mean?
Oh, just the articles this week. You know, it's like coal is like, it feels like coal is this like hangnail or something. It's like this hangnail that's just kind of like, it's still sort of there. And they're not like, they're like, well, it's kind of part of the mix, but we're not really going to focus on it. It's just kind of there. But then, you know, other evil things happening regarding coal too.
They had been building new coal plants, but they'd been shutting down old coal plants faster. And the United States has had practically no new coal capacity added in a dozen years. Donald Trump, of course, wants to stop that. He wants to bring coal back because it will mean that he's done something his predecessors had not done. But,
true. That's absolutely accurate. Yes.
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 At least that's my impression. Okay, should we go on?
Yeah.
We will go on. This is a picture of a building, and the article's from ABC News, and I've got something to say about this one, and I'll bet you do too.
Oh, yeah. So the headline here is how 3D printing could make housing cheaper and more sustainable.
A biohome takes about a week to create. Its material is stronger than concrete, no joke, and it can be recycled entirely, also no joke. As it can be broken down into pellets, which are then used on a new project. The system was developed at the University of Maine's Advanced Structures and Composition Center. You could take that building, this building, and break it down and make it into a boat.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, this is crazy. But, yes. What do you
I
have
just
to
think
say?
it's funny about the boat thing because it's just like, it reminds me of when I was a little kid and the little thing you put in the bathtub and it changes into it's like a sponge, a tiny little sponge.
Oh, yeah.
And it expands and it changes into something. It just like, okay, well, it's like that, but it's,
Yes.
it's like, you're like, okay, wham, bam, boat. Okay. Okay. Apartment building. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
But you had something else to say.
Yeah, I think a lot of, sort of talking about the financial aspect of it makes me think that this would be made for lower income housing.
Yes.
And there's a lot of times there will be these sorts of, when I lived in New York City, there was a lot of this kind of talk of, oh, well, we're going to make these sort of new prefab units that will be cheaper. But they're a lot smaller. And so people have to figure out how they're going to fit into, 350 square feet, studio versus, I guess, normally normally a studio would be around 500 square feet, something like that. So they're trying to figure out how they can manage that. But yet it's this amazing thing. But why isn't it being marketed? If it's so wonderful, could it be marketed not for the low income? So again, it's one of those things that feels like it can be a cringe moment, but it might not be a cringe moment if it is not just shoved at people that are lower income.
This reminds me of a bunch of different things. First of all, if I had a house like that, I'd want it built into the side of a hill. The second thing is, I'd like it to look like it belongs there. And I'd want it to have a great big round door and little round windows, so it looked like a hobbit house. Because I'm attracted to hobbit houses, and I'm not attracted to that.
Well, there's, we see those images of like these beautiful visions, and they show the Hobbit house on this like sort of sparkly, magical land, and it's like, it's attractive. This is different.
The other thing that this reminds me of is I went to Pratt Institute and studied art. Pratt is in Brooklyn, and the area immediately east of Pratt Institute was really badly broken down when I was there. It was primarily made up of a couple of factories.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Farther down there were a few apartments, but mostly it was warehouses that had long passed out of use. They are still there. But now they have BMWs parked out front. And they've been converted into really ugly but high-priced homes. And why would you want, I don't know, maybe what I'm saying is there's a lot of buildings in New York, there's a lot of buildings in a lot of places that could be put into use.
Yep.
And
oh, right. That was the other point that I wanted to make too.
Yes.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Which is that there are so many buildings that are just investments for people. Houses, maybe in Vermont, even houses that are people just buy and invest in and never walk in.
They hold them waiting for the value to go up without renting them out, because if they rent them out, they have to get the low amounts for dealing with somebody they don't necessarily trust. Yeah. And you know, I mean, yeah, we should go on.
No, there's
There's a lot to be said about this.
Yeah.
Okay, our next item is from Renews. This is a nice picture of the mast of wind turbine. You notice the guy going up the ladder. You see the other guy going up the ladder?
Yeah.
Those two long things that are going by the ladder, I think are probably fenders. Because the tide goes up and down, they have to be vertical, and they're there to keep boats from crashing into the ladder. But anyway, Renews.
Yeah. So the headline here is planning reforms to cut energy delivery times by year.
The UK government will cut the time it takes to build major infrastructure by at least a year under planning reforms. Changes to planning and infrastructure bill will scrap unique statutory consultation requirements for large projects having the average 2-year pre-application phase. So they're cutting a year out just by changing the law. And, you know.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'm going to go on because we don't have much to say about that, and we've already run behind schedule. We're up to Friday, April 25th, and here is another item from Renews.
Yeah, so the headline here is GEE files plans for 2 gigawatt Scottish pumped storage.
Yeah, Glen Eirach Energy, and I had to look that up because I don't speak Scottish.
So wonderfully,
Submitted, I do speak Welsh, so I'll get the pronunciation of that a little bit. I speak a little bit of Welsh. I can tell you the 3 sentences I know. One really good one. Anybody who's got a problem with telemarketers should memorize this. Ni fan efer siarad Saesnig gyda chi, which means I'm not going to talk with you in English. Okay. Submitted an application for a 2 gigawatt pumped storage hydro project near Loch Ness. That's actually Loch Ness. If approved, the project will deliver over 20 million pounds annually during a 125-year life cycle. Really? I'm not going to last that long. To Highland communities through a community benefit fund. This is just the amount that's going to the communities. I wonder what will happen with inflation in that time. Polling shows strong support in the area. Okay. When I was a kid, actually not many years before I was born, a pound was $5, which meant that a shilling was like 24 cents. And by the time I went to the UK in 1962, a pound was $2.80. And now it's $1.30. And in that time, the United States dollar has gone through inflation of its own. The pound has just dropped. But anything to say about this? Well, there's a picture of Scotland.
There's a picture of Scotland, yes.
Okay. Our next picture is a picture of China. This is a wind farm.
Yeah.
I've been seeing this picture for years, and I probably have used it on the show before. This is from Yahoo News UK.
Yeah, so the headline here is China says wind and solar energy capacity exceeds thermal for first time.
This is amazing. China's wind and solar capacity exceeds that of thermal. Thermal is coal, gas, oil, nuclear, anything that boils water to make electricity. Mm-hmm. It exceeds the thermal, which is mostly coal in China. Its national energy body said, China, the world's largest greenhouse gas emitter, has pledged to peak carbon emissions by 2030 and achieve carbon neutrality by 2060. They could conceivably be peaking emissions this year, but you know, they promised 2030. More on that? No?
No.
Okay.
More on that one.
We have an item from Renews and solar panels from Zelestra.
Yeah. So the headline here is Zelestra closes $113 million of funding of U.S. solar financing.
Zelestra closed $113 million of financing transaction for an 81 megawatt solar project in Indiana. Banco Santander provided, and I don't
You did that perfect.
except the R. I didn't trill
You
the
don't
R.
have to not that one.
Oh, okay.
I wouldn't trill it because I'm not good at trilling.
Okay.
So
I can teach you how to do that same thing in
Welsh?
in German, which I also speak better than Welsh. There are two different ways to trill. One is with your tongue, and the other is back here. So you can say Reich, or you can say Reich.
Oh.
And that, when I was a little kid, there was Gail Storm starred in My Little Margie. And whenever she got in trouble, she'd look straight at the camera and say, TV was so exciting in 1952.
Yeah.
Anyway, and we practiced that a lot. But then I discovered that there are areas in German where they just do that. And of course, if you go and talk with a German about it, he'll say, no, nobody does that, because every German thinks that he speaks German the way it should be spoken. Anyway, they provided senior security credit facility for the Jasper County solar project. It sounds like it should be a county, fair or something. Jasper County Fair. It rolls off the tongue better than Jasper County Solar Project. The project has long-term environmental attributes purchase agreement with Meta, and is due to be operating in the fourth quarter of 2025. So this thing, we're in the second quarter now.
Yeah.
6 months from now to maybe 8 months from now, maybe not much more than 8, they're going to have this thing built. And that tells you something about how fast these projects
Yeah, that's
go
really
up.
fast.
That's fast. Yeah, if they were building a nuclear plant, they'd be talking about how fast it was going up. It would be ready to go in 2037. And then you discover in 2037 that it's
not actually ready. It's just like a shell. They didn't actually fill in the parts. It's just, yeah.
Okay, we're up to Saturday, April 26th.
Yeah.
And we have a picture here of a solar array that's built between rails on a railroad. This is from Clean Technica.
Yeah, so the headline here is Switzerland unveils world's first operational solar railway project.
Switzerland established the world's first solar power plant installed directly on an active railway line, developed by Swiss startup Sunways. You see that on the side of that rail car. The project features removable solar PV panels laid between the rails, marking a significant advancement in renewable energy integration. This is not a joke, this is real. And if you look at railroads in Europe, there's a lot of them. They're used a lot in Europe. And I've been on Swiss railroads, and they're very comfortable. At least they were 63 years ago. What can I say? Okay, should we go on?
Yeah, let's go on.
Let's go on. We have a picture here of a coal-fired power plant and an article from ABC News.
Yeah, so the headline here is Big Tech's soaring energy demands are making coal-fired power plant sites attractive.
Attractive, but not for coal power. That's the thing. Sorry, Donald, you're probably not going to keep those coal-fired power plants running. Coal-fired power plants, along with a long and increasingly money-losing proposition in the United States, are becoming more valuable now that suddenly strong demand for electric power has to run big tech's cloud and AI applications. Haven't we got something better to do? Has set off a race to find new energy sources. Why don't they just use sun and wind? I have a theory. Do you want to hear it? They want nuclear because it costs so much money, and they want to get that money running through their fingers. You know, I mean, really.
It's true.
That's what they want. And the thing that they know, and this has happened over and over and over again, when the nuclear industry, in my opinion, I've said this before, has three different kinds of numbers. One is accurate. If they say this is going to be a 900 megawatt reactor, they mean it'll produce 900 megawatts, and that's what it'll do. The second kind is numbers that are overly optimistic by a factor of 2 or more. And they include the amount of time it takes to build the plant and the cost of the plant.
Yes.
So if they say this plant is going to cost $9 billion, they mean it's going to cost 18.
Yeah.
But the thing that is really destructive here, that gives them hope, is that they don't say we need 18 billion instead of 9 3 days into the project. They say it when the project should be approaching completion.
Yep.
And they say, well, you've already put $9 billion into this. Do you want to see that go under? And of course, the legislation that has to happen says the state doesn't want to see it go under. So they get a subsidy because they haven't produced what they said they were going to. Now, you want to know what is fair? Now, not regarding safety issues. I have some big complaints about safety in nuclear power. And, things like that. They are overly optimistic by an order of magnitude on safety, and I can prove that. But the thing is, I don't know. I'm sorry. I'm speechless at this. It's almost like they've got a multi-billion-dollar scam going on.
Well, it's like a wrecking ball. It's just this wrecking ball going through, and
yeah, that's what it is. And we've seen this over and over and over and over. I can't think of a nuclear power plant built in the United States that was built at budget on time. But I'll tell you what you can do about nuclear energy, and the nuclear people should be able to do this, and it's fair. And it would make sense for a legislature to say you must do this. And that is, a legislature could say, okay, you're going to bid on a nuclear project. We have to know how much it's going to cost and when it's going to be installed. And then the legislature should go on and say, and if it's late, you make up the difference. And if it costs more, you make up the difference. So make sure that your bid is correct in both respects. Nobody would ever build another nuclear power plant.
yeah, that's true. That's very true.
Okay, we are going to, sorry, we're going to a Clean Technica article on the Slate pickup truck. I don't like the look of it.
Me neither. I do not either.
But I'll tell you, there are trucks out there. I would definitely take this one before some of the others.
Right.
One in particular.
Yeah. So yes, and the headline here is Slate electric pickup truck is the anti-Cybertruck.
The anti-Cybertruck. I would pick the Ford F-150. What is it? They call it the F-150 something, I forget what it is. Anyway, by every measure, Slate's electric pickup truck is the exact opposite of the Cybertruck. It is light, affordable, and basic. Tesla's Cybertruck is heavy, expensive, and loaded with technology, and you've got to do everything from buttons on the dashboard, which means that if you want to turn on the windshield wipers, you've got to take your eyes off the road in the rain and push the...
Oh.
The Cybertruck has got more problems than you can shake a stick at. The Slate popped out of stealth mode this week, and we know a lot more about it than we did 2 weeks ago. And by the way, the base model of the Slate electric pickup truck should start at under $20,000 compared to the, I don't know, what is it, $60,000 for the Cybertruck? That's the most basic model, the model you don't want.
Yes.
It has nothing.
Nothing at all, yeah.
But it will run.
It will run.
And that $20,000 is assuming that you get the federal tax incentives,
Yeah.
which undoubtedly, you know what I saw today? The cost of all of this business of ditching expensive things out of the federal government, throwing people out of their jobs, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Net cost, $2 billion every day. $200 billion have been lost by these money-saving things that have happened during the first 100 years, seems like 100 years, 100 days of the current administration.
Yeah.
It's distressing. It makes, I'm at work at 4 o'clock in the morning, and I hit this kind of news, at 4 o'clock in the morning, and I'd rather be sleeping.
Yes. Yes.
Okay, we're up to Sunday, April 27th, and we have an interesting article on from Clean Technica.
Yeah. So the headline here is, there is one clear winner in the corn versus solar battle.
At Cornell University, researchers showed that if farmers covered just 46% of the land currently used to farm ethanol with solar panels, that would then generate enough energy to reach the U.S. goal for decarbonization for 2050. The solar power is more efficient use of land than corn for ethanol. And, I did this study, back of the envelope study, several months ago, in which I was curious about this, and I thought, wait a minute, what would happen if we got all of our energy from photovoltaics that were installed directly on agricultural land with no agrivoltaics or anything like that? Mm-hmm. Just that. Because I was reading about somebody who was having a fit because of a solar array that was going to go up in Vermont, and they wanted it not to go on agricultural land because the land, and I was saying, these people have never heard of agrivoltaics. They don't know.
Yeah, no. Not a lot of people, but I will say not a ton of people do know about.
Yeah.
It's
and one thing they especially don't know, even if they know about grazing sheep under solar panels or something, is that there are many crops, including peppers and tomatoes, that do better under solar panels than they do out in the open sun. And there are solar panels, in fact, most solar panels have no tendency to produce any kind of toxic and
off gas or anything.
Yeah, anything. I did this thing where I thought, what would happen if we just got all of our energy from solar panels that went onto agricultural land? First of all, how much energy do we need? And I figured out that we needed 29 million acres. And I thought, that seems awfully familiar. I mean, it's big, it's the size of West Virginia. But as I recall, I might have that size wrong. But anyway, I looked and I realized that if we did that, it would increase the amount of land available for growing food. Why? Because if we got all of our energy from solar, we wouldn't need to grow corn for ethanol, which is a really bad crop because every gallon of ethanol we get takes a gallon of gasoline to grow. I mean, this is a bad choice.
Yeah.
But that would mean that we'd have a 2 million acre increase in the amount of land available for food just by converting to solar for everything. And I thought, that's weird. So I sent an email to Mark Z. Jacobson at Stanford, and he sent back an email. He said, George, that's good thinking, but you got the numbers wrong. He said, actually, you underestimated the power of current solar panels. It would be several million acres more than you estimated that would be saved. Why do we do these things? Anyway, corn for ethanol is a horrible use of land. When I was a little kid and growing up in grade school in Illinois, in a town where a third of the kids in my class lived on farms. I remember a teacher saying there are 3 crops that are extremely destructive to the soil. Tobacco is one, cotton is another, and the third is corn. And I remember that one of the boys came in the next day. His father was really mad at that teacher because corn was a good crop. And the teacher said, yeah, corn is a good crop. It is a good crop. No question, corn is a good crop, but it is hard on the soil. And, you have to be really careful to fertilize the soil. Teacher was a nice teacher, but I think what she was saying was true. Today, it's a different story. Corn is grown, 95% of our corn is GMO.
Yep.
And it is grown with just one toxic chemical after another, killing everything in the field, which makes me think a cornfield is a toxic waste dump. You could recover it, but it is a toxic waste dump.
Right, because if it's rough on the land, then yeah.
Yeah. Okay, we are up to this. We have a picture of an oil well and wind turbine, and Eurasian Review is the source of the article.
Yeah, so the headline here is Managing the Shift from Fossil Fuels to Alternatives.
As the global community confronts the twin crisis of climate change and energy insecurity, the imperative to transition toward renewable energy has become increasingly urgent. Solar, wind, hydro, and other alternative sources promise a cleaner, more sustainable future. Anything to say on that? It's pretty straightforward. I think.
It's pretty straightforward. I didn't have anything specific on that one.
Okay.
Yeah.
We will go on.
Yeah.
We have a picture of the Congo River at Kinshasa. Have you heard of Kinshasa?
No,
I
I
bet
have
most
not.
people haven't.
This is from MSN.
MSN, yeah.
Yeah. So the headline here is DRC's Kinshasa could see deadly rain and floods every 2 years.
In early April, extreme rainfall and flooding at Kinshasa, the capital of the Democratic Republic of the Congo, killed at least 33 people. Catastrophic rainfall events are predicted to hit Kinshasa every 2 years in today's warming climate, a study by World Weather Attribution shows. Kinshasa is the capital of the Democratic Republic of Congo. And just hearing that, you would probably never realize that Kinshasa has a population that is just about double the population of New York City. This is 17 million people live in Kinshasa. And it's, it's a big city. It's among the biggest cities in the world. And, we don't think of it. I will tell you the truth. Before I read this article, I didn't know anything about it. I don't know that I recognized the name. It was just another big city. But, you look at the cities in China, half of them I just don't know anything about. Anyway, go on.
Yeah.
Okay, we have an Australian wind farm and an article from Renew Economy. This is an article I find funny.
So the headline here is the $60 billion energy boom hidden in Barnaby Joyce's backyard. Yep, I was also amused by this one.
Did you know who Barnaby Joyce was?
I had not known who Barnaby Joyce was.
Of course, I've been doing this blog for years. And every once in a while, I come across Barnaby Joyce. Let me explain who he is. Barnaby Joyce is the leader of the National Party of Australia. If you had a political party in the United States called the United States National Party, it would probably be the same kind of thing. He's the leader of the party and has been deputy prime minister of the country. Now, has been. He isn't now. He is a climate denier and is opposed to renewable power. Okay, it's kind of a windfall, the kind of windfall that regional Australia has dreams of. $60 billion in investment, 4,000 construction jobs on over 5,000 ongoing jobs. So you got, a lot of people employed here for a country the size of Australia. Is enough clean energy to power half the country. But the local MP, member of parliament, who is sitting on this renewable energy gold mine isn't cheering. Politics over facts. It is just, it's how you do things in this world.
Yeah.
So should we go on?
Let's go on.
We have an article from China Daily,
Yeah.
and this picture, which I chose to accompany the article, is in fact a picture of rural China, but it's not a picture of any part of rural China that we're talking about in the article. So it's just a nice picture.
So the headline here is Green and Intelligent Solutions Boost Rural Revitalization.
Using a green intelligent charging station in Zhengang village as a model, I always pronounce Chinese badly. The State Grid Shuzhou Power Supply Company will deepen its cooperation with the local government departments to inject green momentum into the high-quality development of the local economy. That sounds like a lot of words, doesn't it?
Yeah, this is written very interestingly. But I think I get the point. It's just is a strange. It's just an odd syntax there.
Yes. Well, this was written by somebody who wrote, I think, in China, and then had a Chinese person translate into English.
Right.
And that's not writing to the standards of American English.
Right, because it's just translated.
Yeah, but also, you know, there's a lot going on. If you read things that are written in India, they could be written by a person who was an English speaker as long as he could remember, but the style is different in India than it is in the United States. Yeah. And so Indians use a lot of conjunctions. They something and something and something and something, you know, and they do this and that and the other thing. And they use a lot of long words, and they express themselves differently than Americans do. It doesn't mean they're doing it badly. It just means that they have different
focus areas.
Well, I was going to say they have a different idea of how things should sound.
Yeah.
It's almost like an aesthetic thing, you know. Anyway, that's what they were doing there in China. They were trying to. And actually, I want to comment on this. One thing, I'm actually writing an article now that I'm thinking of putting in Clean Technica. And I'm saying we're treating the world like it isn't in the middle of a paradigm shift. This is not just an energy shift, it's a paradigm shift. Where in the past we had baseload power. We don't need baseload power. Most people don't know what baseload power is. And if you ask people who are politicians or so forth, they'll say, well, baseload power is what guarantees that your light will go on when you turn it on at 2 o'clock in the morning. That's true, but why does that matter? You're going to have the same thing if you've got solar and batteries.
Yep.
You know, it's going to work the same way, and you don't have baseload power in that respect. Baseload power is designed to provide for the base load. What is the base load? It is the minimum demand on a grid for the lifetime, for over a period of time. A baseload power plant should be able to supply power at the time of the minimum demand. Why does that matter? It matters because you want to turn the plant on and keep it going 100% of the time, all the time, day in, day out. Everything else changes, but this plant doesn't. And why do you want that? Because it means that the plant is going to produce the cheapest quality, the cheapest electricity on the grid, because it doesn't need the bells and whistles that you need to ramp up and ramp down. The one problem with this is solar and batteries is cheaper. And it's better because baseload power plants need this backup thing in order to meet demand because they only meet part of it, guaranteed. And that backup power is expensive. It's going to be, in some cases, 25 cents per kilowatt hour. And you can replace it with a battery, which will produce power at 1 cent per kilowatt hour. So why do you need that old system that was designed in 1920? You don't. Okay.
Wow.
Now we're up to your favorite.
My favorite today.
This is the BBC, and
the headline here is meadowscaping.
I love
the
it.
people turning their lawns into meadows.
Pennsylvania is one of a handful of states actively encouraging homeowners to transition their lawns into meadows. No more lawn mowing. Oh. And you have a lawn that looks like that. Blue flowers, and I see red flowers and orange flowers and pink flowers and yellow flowers and white flowers and all kinds of flowers instead of level grass.
Yeah.
You know, and I've known people who prided themselves with level grass. They had lawns that looked like they could be used for a golf green, but you know, okay. In 2020, the Pennsylvania Department of Natural Resources started a lawn conversion program that in some cases will help finance meadow projects. Well, why is this important?
Well, so many reasons why it's important. One for
Hoverflies.
Oh, yeah. That's one. That's one. I would also say that the sound of lawnmowers. That there's a lot of there's so much that this solves and or makes better.
This means that you've got insects that feed birds.
Biodiversity.
Biodiversity. It's just I see lots and lots of pluses on this, and you know, if it came to that, I could see making golf illegal so that you could have this. No, I wouldn't do that. But, you know, I do think this is a good solution.
I think it's great because also when you're talking about to finance this, that means you put less of the onus on the consumer when they don't have to put all that money into doing this.
Power equipment for one thing, or hiring somebody to run it.
Yeah.
And then lawnmowers are horrible emitters of pollutants.
Pain. Yeah.
Yeah.
Emitters of pain.
Yeah. Okay. Go on?
Yeah.
Okay. We have an article from PSU Watch.
Yeah, so the headline here is adding 50 gigawatts renewable energy yearly can end coal imports by 2029, save India $66 billion.
If India adds 50 gigawatts of renewable energy every year, that's a lot of renewable energy, but it's less renewable energy than China's adding. China added close to that amount in 1 quarter. And India has a bigger population now. It could stop importing thermal coal completely by 2029 and save $66 billion in foreign exchange between 2025 and 2029, according to a report by think tank Climate Risks Horizon. And that's not, this is serious. The Indians know this. They're acting like they know it. Mm-hmm. So there we go. Okay, more?
Yeah.
We have an item from Clean Technica.
Yeah. So the headline here is Sun Train reimagines battery storage and clean energy.
This is such a perplexing article for a bunch of reasons, but let me read the synopsis. Sometimes we have excess electricity in one place, but we need it somewhere else. And what do? We have transmission lines. But what if the transmission lines can't carry all that electricity? We need new transmission lines. And that takes years and is very expensive.
Yeah.
Okay, new transmission lines could send electricity to where it's needed, but they're expensive and take years to plan, permit, and build. SunTrain thinks it has a better idea. Ship the electricity by rail. Yeah, it'll work. It's a short-term solution, but it'll work. Having the transmission lines would make this unnecessary.
Yeah.
I don't advocate in favor of transmission lines. Transmission lines, well, you know, people in Vermont who are opposed to wind turbines don't realize that transmission lines kill more birds than wind turbines do. But the thing is, we don't need any of that stuff. What we need is to have local power generated locally. And I'm working on this thing today. It's just 10 years since Mark Z. Jacobson published his paper outlining how each of the states in the United States, all 50 of them, one by one, for each he's got an indication of how it could put electric generating renewable power on the grid to take over all of its energy load. Just think of how much money that would save. And that's solar, wind, hydro, geothermal, and in cases where it's applicable, tidal and various kinds of current energy. No nuclear.
No.
So, you know, he says we don't need to burn anything. That means we don't need to pay for fuel. We don't need to breathe bad air. And on top of everything else, it'll make cheaper electricity and employ more people. So where is the downside exactly?
Not sure.
Okay. Should we go on?
Yeah, let's go
Okay,
on.
we have a picture here of climate anomalies in Europe in March of 2025.
Yeah, so this is from Clean Technica. Copernicus, warmest March in Europe and lowest Arctic winter sea ice.
March 2025 was the warmest on record for Europe as temperatures continued to hit new highs. The surface air temperatures are the map on the left in the picture. And obviously Spain did not have high temperatures, but when you get north or east of France, which is pretty far west, everything is hotter.
Yeah.
It was a month of contrasting rainfall extremes, as many areas had their driest March on record and others their wettest for at least the past 47 years. Well, the right-hand map, the blue areas had their wettest and the red areas had their driest. So the rule today is weather is weird.
Yes, that is the rule.
And this is from Copernicus and so forth. Okay, going on?
Yeah, let's go on.
All right, we have a picture. You can regard this picture as one of two things. One is it's a photograph of offshore wind turbines, which are in the bottom of the screen. The other is it's a photograph of a lone seagull. So take your pick.
So the headline here is, in 2024, 11 gigawatts of offshore wind added.
This is from Renews. The World Forum Offshore Wind figures show that 31 new offshore wind farms with a total capacity of 11 gigawatts were taken into operation in 2024. This increased global offshore wind capacity to a total of 78.5 gigawatts. According to the Global Offshore Wind Report for 2024, China continues to lead in the sector, and the United States continues to lag badly. And by the way, interesting article in the news today. We will talk about it next week. Mark Carney is inviting the offshore wind companies that got jilted by Donald Trump to build their wind farms off the coast of Canada. And what's he going to do with all that electricity? Guess. No?
No.
He's going to sell it to the United
Yes,
States.
oh yeah, exactly. Yes, exactly.
Okay.
It's like, it starts with an S, I know. Sell.
Okay, that
Sell,
was
sell.
from Renews.
Yeah.
And I'm going to go on to the next item.
Yeah.
This is the second to the last item.
Yeah. So this one is from ABC News, and the headline here is "Coal miners speak out as Trump strips away their health protections."
What is going on here? Donald Trump said he was gonna be so nice to the coal miners, and he keeps talking about this, and he keeps doing the same sorts of things, which put them out of work.
Yes, and yeah.
Okay, that machine that's in the picture is a coal mining machine, and those it's on a track. It moves along. It mines the coal, drops the coal onto a conveyor belt where it is carried out. There are people watching all this happen, making sure that it's done properly. Not very many of them. The operation of coal mines, when Donald Trump left office in 2021, he had brought the number of coal miners down to about 35,000 from the 50,000 that were there when he took over as president. And I think he's probably going to do the same thing again.
Yeah.
But I should read the synopsis. This is from ABC News. As President Donald Trump vows to reinvigorate America's coal industry, critics say his administration stripped away key protections for miners. In his first 100 days, his administration decimated the federal institute that protects them from such things as black lung disease. So they're going to go into the mines and get black lung disease and have no health care. And one of the things that I discovered reading this article, which I had not known, is that black lung disease is not just coal. It's also not just the carbon particles, it's also silicates, which are worse. And you don't want them in your lungs. It's probably not a good idea.
Probably not a good idea.
But these miners, they're being told that they're going to have jobs, and frankly, I don't believe it. The way they got jobs under Joe Biden was that the federal government knew that they needed help and started helping coal be sold overseas. But Donald Trump is not going to have that as a card he can play, because nobody worldwide, how many people really are willing to go along with a guy who will throw tariffs at you? And the Chinese make coal. Their coal is in decline. The last British coal mine has closed. The Europeans are gradually closing coal. And you know, the market is, and here we just read about India. Is coal going to be around in 5 years? I think it will be.
Probably
a little
5
bit,
years.
you know, a little bit. Okay. This picture of rural England, I made the comment, who would imagine climate change in a place like this? You look at this and you don't think of high temperatures, and
Looks like Vermont.
it almost does. You know, it looks, the road is not a Vermont road.
No.
And there's certain peculiarities going on here. For example, this road has a mound on the side of it. On the right side of that road, there's a mound. And why is it there? Well, I don't know, but a lot of English roads are like that. And where I lived in two places in the UK. One was in Canterbury, and I really didn't get to know the countryside in Kent all that well. We went around, but not a lot. But in Devon, which is a place that I really loved, we lived in a community that had about 350, 400 people in it. It had a church, which, by the way, had antique stuff in it. It was an antique church. It had a rood screen, which is a screen that separates the nave from the sanctuary. And it meant that you could close a gate to keep people out of the sanctuary. And I have heard that these rood screens were originally designed to protect the priests in case the people in the congregation got aggravated and rioted in the church.
Huh.
But this particular rood screen was stolen. And it was stolen specifically to protect it. At the time of Oliver Cromwell, when his troops were going around shooting statues and stained glass windows and stuff, it had artwork on it. And somebody stole it out of a place and put it up in this little town. The town had a convenience store that was, I don't know, it made any convenience store that you've seen look like a giant supermarket.
Right.
It was just one of those tiny little stores. It had a pub, of course, the Blacksmith Arms pub, beautiful. But on the sides of the roads there were the markers at the edges of the fields. What are they called?
Mile markers?
No, they were ridge. You know, they in the Second World War they had problems breaking through these things in Normandy.
Right.
And they were vertical, and you know they were
like barracks.
They were stoneworks that were vertical,
Yeah,
covered with
right.
grass, and then on top you'd have dirt, and then
Yeah.
stuff growing up on top of that. And my mind isn't working very well. I'm getting too old.
I'm going to go to the story,
Okay, go to
which
the story.
is the government not taking climate seriously, advisors.
Yeah, and the government has made very little progress in preparing the UK for threats posed by rising temperatures since coming to power. Now that's the current government. A highly critical report from the Independent Climate Change Committee says progress is, quote, either too slow, has stalled, or is leading in the wrong direction, end quote. That's kind of stinging. Now, the government of the UK doesn't want to admit that it's failing. I can tell you that, particularly on climate change.
Yeah.
Something rose. Yeah, you could drive down a road as wide as the one in the picture. Hedgerow. It's a hedgerow.
Oh, yes.
And you could be driving along and you'd have these hedgerows in either side. And all of a sudden, right in front of you on a road that looks like this, coming in the opposite direction, is a double-decker bus. What do? Well, the English drivers who had very small cars would just pull over and let the bus go by. They knew how to do that. We didn't know how to do that. We came from the United States. Anyway, It is time to end the show.
Yeah.
And we have a wish for you to have an utterly gorgeous week.
Yes.
There it is.
Yes.
Nancy has put that up just to prove that I'm not telling a lie. And well, goodbye.
Bye.
See you next time.
See
We
you
hope
next
you
time.
come back next time.
Come back.